This is the January 3rd, 2018 Development Review Board meeting for the town of Shelburne. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And at this time, ask if anyone has any public comment for any issue that's relevant to the Development Review Board. I have that. Seeing none, at this time I'll request if any members of the board have a conflict of interest or have had any ex parte communications with any applicant on the agenda for this evening. No, yeah. You're supposed to pass them.
Just the agenda, right?
No, for some reason she's passing out this
Okay.
as well.
Gotcha.
Sure. I assume that there's no conflicts or ex parte communications, so that being the case, we can move on to approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve this evening, the December 6, 2017 and December 20, 2017 minutes. I'll take up the approval of the December 6, 2017 minutes. We didn't approve them last time because we didn't have a quorum of the members present on the 20th that were present on the 6th. I think that Mr. Samet had one change to the minutes. Did you get that, Marianne, when we were here before, a spelling?
Also, the vote numbers,
I'm sorry?
the numbers on the voting needed to be reduced by one.
Yep, there was an abstention.
Okay, very well. Does anyone have any other suggested changes or edits to the December 6, 2017 meeting minutes? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Next, we'll turn to the December 20 minutes. Does anyone have any changes or discussion regarding the December 20 minutes? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Any discussion? Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. The next matter on our agenda is a design review application of, it's DR 17-21, Barbara Luckenbill, who's the owner, and Scott Aguiar, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, also applicant. So replace a roof at Shelburne Drive. Is there anyone here for that application? Does anyone have any questions? It's a one-page staff report. The application was approved by the HB and DRC. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? Can I have a motion? And that being the case, I'll make a motion to grant design review approval of application DR 17-21 for a new dark gray metal roof at 173 Shelburne Wood Drive with the following condition, that a zoning permit be obtained prior to commencing construction. May I have a second to the motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We're a little ahead of the game, and our next matter on our agenda is SUB 04-10R1. It's an application by Krebs and Lansing Consulting Engineers on behalf of J. Desitel for final plan approval of a proposed 6-lot subdivision. The property is located at 0 Pond Road in the Rural District and Floodplain and Watercourse Overlay Districts, and here we are, I think. That's quite all right. We're just calling you up right now on the agenda. It's all right.
I was saying earlier, you guys always give the 5 minutes for the public comments, and then it takes 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's been a while since we've had any public comment.
Hey, Mrs. Cecil?
Sure. And before you get going, Scott, I'll have to swear you in. If there's anybody else.
I'd like to, Jay's just using the restroom.
Oh, okay, great. We'll wait then a second. That's fine. we go.
Oh, you have it up there, maybe.
Yeah, it's not really super legible, but
And then we can probably hit the lights.
But
Eh.
I'll do it in such a way so that it's not blocking. I did do a bit of a cartoon plan too, that I thought might help
Great.
see some of the things we're talking about.
So Scott, you're going to have to make it so everybody can see. So maybe if you angle it just straight on to the windows, that'll be a little bit better.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Great. Okay, so having called number 5 on our agenda, that application of Krebs and Lansing on behalf of Jay Desitel for Zero Pond Road, is I see a few folks in the audience. Can I have a show of hands of folks who intend to give testimony on this application? 3. Okay, so it's Mr. Wimet, right? Yep. Gilmet, sorry. And all right, so can you all raise your right hands if you're going to testify? Do you all solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in connection with any testimony you should give this evening on this application? Yeah, all right, thank you. Have a seat. And who wants to start? You need the microphone, and please state your name for the record.
My name's Scott Homestead. I work for Krebs and Lansing Consulting Engineers. I'm the engineer for the applicant who's with me tonight, Jay Desitel. Here to talk about his property on Pond Road in Route 116. And that we've been here, I think most people we've talked about this quite a bit here. We've been here for pre-sketch, sketch, and preliminary. We had a site visit about this time last year, which had with some similar weather to what we're having now, as I recall. So since I'll give a brief overview of what we're proposing here, and then maybe just talk a little bit about any comments in the staff report and any issues that require more discussion. Essentially, the applicant is proposing to subdivide their land into 6 building lots. What we're looking at here is there'll be 2 lots that are served off the existing drive on Route 1 from Route 116 that's currently serving a house over here. So that'll be
got 2 or 3?
There's 2.
Just 2.
So there's an existing house, and then
thought there
lots
was 3.
1 and
Oh, yeah.
lots 2 will be served
Okay.
from that
Thank you.
driveway. And then lot 3 would be from off of Pond Road. This is, if you've driven down Pond Road, this is the spot where Jay had an excavator parked for a while. You might have seen if you went down there. There's
It's still there as of the other day,
It may
correct?
be. It's bad if it's not. The route of this driveway is essentially along an old farming or woods road. We drove that excavator out to this building envelope site without having to cut any vegetation or do anything. And then lots 4, 5, and 6 would be
Got it,
served from a new curb cut off of Pond Road, essentially on the high spot. This is the general area where we posted the notice if anyone had happened to drive down and see that. So this driveway would come up, serve these 3 lots, and then neck down to just be one single driveway serving lot 6. All lots will be served by individual drilled wells and on-site wastewater disposal systems. The wastewater disposal is at least partially driving the development pattern on this site. There are very poor soils in general on this whole project. We spent back in 2003 or 4, we spent probably 2 weeks digging test holes on this site, just looking for anywhere where we could do septic, and we finally found a few. But I know in previous meetings we had some discussions about clustering and maybe why couldn't it be a little more clustered, and that's one of the main reasons it's difficult to, is that the wastewater capacity is in pockets. There's not a spot to do a community system or multiple individual systems in a small area. Water supply would be from drilled wells. We've looked at the well yields in this area in general, and they seem to be at least adequate, if not very good. So we don't anticipate any problems with that. We have obtained a state wastewater and potable water supply permit for this project. We got that last summer. I believe we included it as an attachment in our submittal. Similarly, we've obtained a state of Vermont stormwater discharge permit for the project as well. The stormwater treatment will be through a variety of practices, including swales along the driveways, vegetated disconnections for the houses, and some dry ponds at the various low spots in the road. I've sort of outlined those in blue if you want to see them here. One of the storm ponds, the bigger one along Pond Road, will double as a fire pond for the fire department for the town of Shelburne. It's been sized to meet their recommendations for volume, including accounting for ice on the bottom, on the top, and sediment buildup on the bottom. I've met with the fire chief and the deputy chief a couple times, and we think we've really got that dialed in at this point. Hopefully, they provide you some comments to that effect. Excuse me. And so that's really what's going on here from an engineering standpoint. I'll know in previous meetings and including in the comments for this meeting, a lot of our discussions have centered on open space and how that is presented and how it's going to be preserved. We certainly feel like there's a lot of open space on the project, more than is required, and it's a good project in terms of the preservation of open space. There's been a lot of talk about how people will sort of know where it is, and how can we recreate this if people aren't using it the way they're supposed to. I had a brief discussion with Caitlin today about the idea of maybe what we could do to sort of memorialize that better would be to put a series of bearings and distances around that, similarly to what we do for a new lot. And then that could be filed in town and become a permanent document that any surveyor or engineer could recreate if there was an issue. And we could tie that to some monumentation in the field. We thought that might be a good sort of in-between, and rather between the ideas of just having it be sort of willy-nilly out there, or I know there's been some push to do a separate lot for the open space in the past, and we really don't want to do that on this particular project. So that's an item that we could discuss more if that was of interest. So then at that, given that we've been here, 3 or 4 times before, I go ahead and open up to questions or specific topics of interest.
Any members of the board have questions of the applicant? Well, of Scott, to be precise.
Probably ought to maybe go through any items in the comments that are unresolved that need to be addressed. Do you want to go ahead and do that? Just if you're aware that you've seen the staff report.
I have, and I tried to touch on them in general. We could go through them item by item if that's what people would like to do.
That's what we generally do.
Yep. Okay. So starting off on page 2, section 800. There was a comment about, and I meant to follow this up with Caitlin, I did not. It says proposed lot 5 is partially located within the floodplain and watercourse overlay district, and that we need to provide information that no land development will take place in the area in accordance with Article 18. See water quality comments. I have not seen those water quality comments. Those were not forwarded to me. The original ones. I don't remember that. This struck me as a new issue, I guess. So it's just this area. Yeah, I don't know where we can. That seems like a minor issue. We'll probably be able to resolve. The building envelope for lot 5 is on the highest spot in the land. It seems highly unlikely it would be in the floodplain or watercourse overlay district. I think that probably overlays somewhere, more near where the wetlands are at the base of this slope, would be my guess.
Oh.
So this has lot 5, maybe that's why I'm being confused.
Yeah, I was having trouble with myself.
Anyway, I'm not very concerned about it, I just wanna make sure.
Okay.
There's no cutting, or, I don't think there's a building
When-
anywhere near it.
We'd certainly agree to a condition that we not disturb anything within that district. You know, we believe we've cited the driveways and building envelopes well outside of any of those, and if we didn't show it on our plans, that's just an oversight.
Did we determine if it's lot 3 or lot 5? And assuming we approve this, Kate, if we approve it, we're approving it with the building envelopes as depicted. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, just to make sure. Because I don't see a building envelope on lot 5.
So
It's right,
this might be where this plan is sort of
Oh,
useful.
there it
I
is.
heavily outline those in black on here.
okay, so there's 5, 6, where's 4? Oh, there it is. But where's the building envelope for? Oh, it's right there. It's just really hard to see. Okay, got it.
If you look
Got
on
it.
the screen, it's
Yep.
up in this area.
Got it. I can see it now. My bad.
So again, we chose these building envelopes on the high spot of a ridge, so it seems highly unlikely that's going to be an issue.
Okay.
Moving
move on to 2.
To 800/2. Okay, this talks mostly about the physical boundaries of the open space areas and how those are going to be delineated for the convenience of the town, any potential enforcement, and for landowners to not encroach on the area. Again, we want this open space to look as natural as possible. I mean, I don't think anyone has any interest in, building fence lines along the limits of the open space. So again, I go back to my previous discussion where I think we'd be willing and able to sort of memorialize those in a formal way with some bearings and distances and some deeds that could be tied to that. But beyond that, we're not looking to put anything in the field. I don't
think that's the case. I think the second part of this is most important, and it's not depicted on the plans.
Right.
The open
So-
space is certainly depicted on the plans.
No, but you need
The
to have a
periphery- well,
75-foot
read down.
buffer.
Oh, yeah.
Periphery buffer.
The 75-foot buffer, that's another issue, and we have actually, even in the plan you see before you, we've added that to the plans, and that's certainly
Okay.
not a problem. That was just an oversight.
So that's going to get added to the plan?
Correct.
Okay.
And already has been.
But we don't see that on our paper?
No, I did that today.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So we're going to make sure that we have that as a condition on approval then?
That's fine.
Okay.
803, the applicant has established building envelopes and pros and measures. I feel like this is sort of the same comment.
These are pretty
Yeah.
repetitive, for FYI.
And what 800-4, whether the proposal includes adequate provisions for erosion prevention, sediment control during construction, minimizing stormwater generation after construction, adequate stormwater treatment after construction. As I said, we've obtained a state stormwater discharge permit for this. These plans, in addition, I believe, have been reviewed by Dave Wheeler, the city of South Burlington stormwater superintendent. I believe Shelburne subs out that review to Dave. He had some very minor comments that we have already addressed. In terms of erosion prevention, sediment control, we will be obtaining a state of Vermont general permit for stormwater runoff from construction sites. And that was also included in our narrative. So I think we've addressed all that, unless someone disagrees. Whether the proposed development is in compliance with the Shelburne Comprehensive Plan, zoning bylaws, and other bylaws that are in effect. We included again a narrative stating how we certainly believe that it's in compliance with all of those things. I noticed on the staff comment it says it's to be determined, so I think that's somewhat up to the board to determine whether they agree with our statements in that regard.
Are you reading 806?
I'm reading 805.
Oh, sorry. Yep. How about 806? I think that's something we've talked about.
Okay. So this
That's
is
the same thing as
Yeah,
801, I believe, isn't it?
Well, so, no, that was the floodplain and watercourse. There's a wetland advisory layer, which doesn't necessarily mean that there's a wetland there. There's just some indicators that there is, right where lot 5 has the driveway going through.
I think you do mean lot 3.
Why do I keep mixing those up?
I don't know, but that's what we've talked about.
Yeah, lot 3.
But
So
you've,
Okay.
lot
but
5
you've
right there.
delineated it, right? You had somebody delineate
So
it?
we've delineated this area. So there has not been wetlands delineations done in the area of the Lot 3 driveway. As I stated earlier, that there's an existing road there that we're proposing to use. And so I have a high degree of confidence that that will not have any wetland impacts. If that is an issue for the board, what I would like to propose would be a condition that we have a wetlands ecologist look at that in the spring. That's certainly something we can't do now. We can't do it in the winter. But if that was a major concern, I spoke to Jay earlier this evening and felt like that was something that we could agree to if it was a major concern. And maybe it could be conditioned so that no building permit could be issued until such time as that was reviewed. Does that seem like something
Yeah,
that could
the
be acceptable?
The problem is if it's not delineated and it's not visible
We can't
either
approve
on
it.
the plans or to the people that are doing the work there, the wetlands get, ruined or.
Oh, I couldn't
imposed
agree
upon.
more, and that's, I don't know, maybe I wasn't clear. I'm proposing that no building be allowed until it's delineated.
The problem is if we approve this, it's going to go into the town record. The Mylar will go in like this, correct?
Yeah, so
Without-
the Mylar would have to be amended with that driveway relocation.
If it was
If-
indeed
if there was.
relocated. And I think can be, the Mylar doesn't show driveways. It's just a driveway for a house. So you don't have to, typically on a property plat, you don't have to show driveways. So I think you could file the Mylar, have a condition on the actual construction on the lot without that causing future problems.
So, meaning the driveway will be removed from the Mylar? Is that what
Won't
you're
be
saying?
on
The driveway
it.
wouldn't be shown on a Mylar. A single-family home driveway is not required to be shown on a Mylar.
Got it.
We show the easements for the shared ones because that's a legal
Right.
thing that needs to be on there.
So what would the condition be? How would we say that condition, that a wetlands ecologist,
Wetlands need to be delineated by.
right,
Wetlands professional.
for lot 3 or for
consultant.
the entire PUD? Lot 3
Lot
only.
3.
It could be prior to the approval of the building permit or prior to commencing land development, which would kind of include clearing and all
Yeah,
that.
because that's when, building the house has nothing to do with it. It's building the driveway and all that.
Yeah.
That's where you can have
Well, I think
problems with the.
I believe you need a building permit to put in a driveway in Shelburne.
We won't see it.
Yeah, I,
Will it?
I'm fine with the condition
Prior to-
of no development until it's delineated as well. If that makes people more comfortable, that's fine.
Okay, so then when it gets reduced to practice, it doesn't come back in here. It's just a
No.
building permit that has delineated wetlands that need to be honored.
Correct, before any construction can begin.
Right, so that means the plans then will get filed with the building permit?
I would imagine.
think that
Yeah,
would be
site plan.
Kate's job. If it's in there, if it's in the conditions of approval, it would be Kate's job to make sure it's been addressed before she issues the permit.
She'll go out there, she'll take a little drive.
So how will you remember? Or your replacement remember? Or 2 years or 5 years from now, how will anyone remember?
So on our application forms, it asks if it was part of the DRB approval, and it's supposed to list the DRB number, so this would be SUB, whatever it is.
Okay.
So that should tell that person if it's me or someone else
Take a look at the approval.
Those findings to make sure all the conditions are met. That's the practice.
Sounds foolproof.
I find that stuff actually works pretty well. It's like there's the permits being tied together tends to trigger things pretty quickly.
If it helps, it'll be the first thing I'll be doing in the spring.
Jay, you need the mic.
If it helps, it's the first thing that I'll be doing in the spring. I don't know if your plans are to be here through the spring, but there's something I don't know.
This isn't a loose end we're going to leave out there. If we were having this meeting in May, I would be telling you that we had this work scheduled for next week.
I think it just needs to be.
In the condition.
Simple.
So I think that would bring us to 808, which isn't really an issue.
Yep.
Skip right through to 811 regarding the wells. We talked about this a little bit before, that we have searched. We did a search of the well yields within the area of this project, and the well yields were between 3/4 of a gallon a minute to 60 gallons a minute. So I don't think we have any reasons to be concerned that there won't be adequate yields in the wells here. And after that,
Now we're
We-
talking about lot size, and I thought it was covered in your letter.
I thought so too, and I had this discussion with Caitlin earlier today that I think 330.3As through D were addressed. Should be a table in there
Here is.
that addresses all
I
within
didn't-
the.
Yeah,
Can you just answer me this on lot 6? The piece I didn't fully understand was,
Lot 6?
yeah, for lot frontage, you have 0.
Correct.
I didn't.
That's
can you
because-
explain that to me?
There's, lot 6 is sort of an inland lot,
Right,
so to
yep.
speak.
Yep.
And its only frontage is on the private right-of-way. There's no
Gotcha.
public frontage. So,
Wouldn't, going back to the table, wouldn't it be normal practice to just put that on the plan? I know like in other municipalities, that's a requirement, but
Put the width and depth and all that.
the context and the content of his letter.
I've done it, certainly both ways. Different municipalities do ask for it different ways. You're right. In Milton, for instance, they would want that right on the plan. South Burlington and in Shelburne in the past, I've done it as an attachment.
Okay.
We skip the ones where there's no comments? Is that-
Yep. Unless anybody has a question. Anybody?
Next relevant one is 1900.7.
1900.7? This is regard to pedestrian circulation and bicycle accommodations? Is that what
And
you-
snowmobiles.
and snowmobiles? Yeah. I think, hopefully we can all agree that the general discussions about, pedestrian paths and bike paths and, bike racks and those sorts of things really aren't applicable to this type of project. I can talk about the snowmobile club a little bit. I've had some nice conversations with a gentleman from Charlotte, I forget his name, who runs the snowmobile club. And apparently, it's interesting, this section of snowmobile, a vast trail through here is quite important because it is part of a larger network that he told me goes all the way that connects Massachusetts to Canada. And so he was very concerned in a friendly enough way that be maintained. And Jay has every intention of maintaining that. And what we are proposing to do is to relocate it in a way that doesn't go, right by building sites. And so the current route of shows up better on this plan. So the current route of the snowmobile trail sort of starts here and cuts straight across. It's a dotted line that I'm sure is basically impossible to see on your plan. And what we are proposing is to reroute this over to here along what is essentially the watercourse corridor, which is of course be frozen in the winter, and down along this way, and then down along around the property line and now to the south. And we'll sort of hit back up with this corridor between the trees that you can see here. So that has, every intention of being maintained, and I think everyone wants that. And
Could you use the former swamp road?
the swamp road is that's generally the location of where this driveway is, and so that's why it's going to come sort of more over
Not
in
on
this
my
area.
map.
Well, the right-of-way doesn't match the old road bed, which is something
Oh.
we've run into
Oh.
in this area before. I won't begin to understand it, but we think
So
this
where's the right-of-way is what's on my map, and the actual road bed is what's on your map?
is more over in this area.
Okay,
That's
got
correct. And, so we think this is a good place for the snowmobile trail because it's open. It's an existing gap in the trees. It's relatively flat for a long portion of it, and so that location would be part of the filed documents for the project.
Can we add another, would it make sense, I'm asking the board, to add another condition that because it's not going to be on your site plan, it's not going to be on your Mylar, so I'd like a condition that says that I'm just asking, a vast recreational trail be maintained through the open areas, because if we don't have the condition, we don't know that there's no way to enforce
Fine with that.
the representation. Is that legitimate for us to do, Kate, in your opinion? Well, the thing is, I'm not sure that we want to call it just a recreational trail, because then you couldn't use it. I mean, the vast recreational trail is going to go over land that can only be used during the winter when it's frozen. So if we call, right, so, but just to call it a recreational path?
I think
Yeah.
can we specifically just refer to it as the Vast Trail? I mean, I think that's what it's commonly
Great.
referred to.
Good. Thank you.
Not that it's of my concern, but there's no one here.
Mr. Gilmet?
There's no one here from Bast?
No, I don't believe so. I've spoken to him on the
When you
phone.
spoke to Norman
Mr.
People,
That is who
Gilmet,
it
you
was.
need the,
is it because you can't hear, or me, or?
no, because it's for the,
So you've discussed this with Norm Tebow?
I believe that's who it was.
They will allow that trail to go across that water, that swamp area?
Yes, when it's frozen.
He
Really?
said it's been there in years past. He said it was there last year in that location. It poked right out, and then I think cut across your field right there. It's been in.
Yeah, they never crossed that. So so that's where you, in between your excavator and the 4, 5, and 6?
Yeah, there's a, do I need the mic?
you do.
There's another mic right there.
Excellent. I couldn't see it from where I was, or where I am.
Should be on.
Testing.
No, it's all right. It doesn't amplify, it just gets you to the TV.
There you go. I spoke with Mr. Tebow, and he said that it has come out. Let me just get my bearings here. He said there were years in the past where it poked right out a cut through here, and there were actually signage there.
Yeah.
There's a turn off in the road right near there, a small little turn off.
Like a pull-off?
And a pull off.
Yeah,
He said
correct.
it cut right through there. He says it usually runs right through here, but he had no issue
Oh, yeah.
winding it right through here. And quite frankly, you wouldn't be able to use that path for anything other than when it's frozen. I mean, people could ski on it, I guess, in the winter, but in the summer, it's not usable.
Well, the reason why I ask that is because they actually looped all the way around so it goes across our field, and I suggested it goes along the swamp. They actually go on the road, and I asked them for what reason they don't go on the swamp, and they said they're not allowed to go over anything with water. So, but if it's okay with Norm, he ought to know.
I spoke to him and he said
Okay.
he was approving of the plan. So
No, just sometimes the water ain't froze and there's snow on the ground.
That's true, yeah.
It don't make sense, but
Is there any way, Scott, to route it so it doesn't go over the swamp?
I think to be clear, the existing route goes over a swamp as well.
Okay,
So we're talking about kind of moving it from one swamp to another.
okay.
What we're really trying to do is provide a route that is, usable without A, running it by people's houses, or B, cutting trees. We don't want to be out there clearing a vast trail. And so that sort of limits you to these spots that are where it is now and where we're sort of proposing it.
Great. All right, so that gets us, the fire comments, I had some questions about that.
Sure.
They wanted to make sure there was enough turnaround for
Yep.
their trucks in the 4, 5, 6 area.
Correct. And so I had some really great conversations with the fire folks on this. So basically, on a lot like lot 4 here, essentially the driveway itself would be the turnaround because it's right next to the house. So a fire truck would come in this way, they could turn into the driveway, and then they would just sort of back out and turn around.
And you talked with the fire chief about that?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And so there's a number associated with it. But when you get to these bigger building envelopes, basically what we don't like to do on our plan development plans is tell people exactly how and where to build their house. And so if they build their house over here, the turnaround is going to be different than where if they build it here. And so what we want people to do is to, when they build their houses, they will work with the fire department to position the turnaround, as part of their house design process. And John and Jerry, they were all about that because they would actually rather see it. They would rather see it in the field and be like, yes, this is where I can put my truck. This will work great, as opposed to me even trying to sort of take a stab at it on paper, so to speak. And like I said, and it may be if they build, for instance, on these lots where you're just pulling a driveway right off the main road, they may build close enough where they don't have to do anything different. But on these longer ones, it's more likely that they'll build a little T or a Y as part of their lot development to accommodate the fire trucks. Does that answer your question?
It does. What about width? You're going to be 24 feet, but it's really 22 feet width.
So it's
on
actually
either side.
for the shared driveways, it's 20-foot driveway with 2-foot shoulders. So 24 feet of stabilized surface that can support the weight of a fire truck. And then when you get down past where it's no longer shared, we can neck that down to 18 feet with 2-foot gravel shoulders. And that's pretty burly for a single family lot. We bumped that up from what we originally showed.
Would this be something that would be appropriate as a condition that before a building permit driveway placement approval by the fire department, or is that something that's implicit before anyone gets a building permit?
I think it'd be more like before a CO on something like
I
that.
was writing it down.
Yeah, it's
for
more of a fun.
turnarounds to be approved by the fire department prior to approvals.
Okay, great, I got that.
We don't do COs in Shelburne.
Oh, you don't?
We do?
Okay,
So we bumped down to 1930.3, or is there something?
1900.8,
Oh, we need a road name?
yeah, which is approved by the select board, but just doesn't.
Okay.
What's up?
So that's something we'll come back and work with staff on.
I've actually,
Have you already done that?
I've been trying to get road names approved for 2 years. They won't approve the road names until you guys go through the final approval process. So we're just waiting. I've submitted the names. Just waiting.
Yeah.
It was maybe a year and a
Easiest
half
thing to do
ago.
is pick a name and then change it. I've done that before. Right, Kate?
We're happy to provide a road name. You know, I think Jay's right. You know, those people who issue road names, and I've run into this at all municipalities, they don't like to issue road names for unapproved projects. Because then it's sort of, you're first in line to get it. Someone else can choose the same name.
Now we're down to 1930.3.
3.
That's the periphery buffer.
That's periphery buffer. That was an oversight. I've already added it to plan. We'll send revised plans to Caitlin. I'll send her a
Okay, great.
digital one tomorrow.
And the setbacks thing is all taken care of too.
I believe so.
Left is just, if you're okay with Scott's proposal about delineating the open space with markers and all that.
Yeah, I guess I am. How does it, how do other people feel about that? Pardon.
As far as just
Yes.
putting some survey points on the,
Yeah. So you'd be done two ways. So we would similar. I'd probably do it on a separate plan for clarity, but we would add, you know, bearings and distances similar to what you see here around the lots. I'd add those all around the open space where we don't have it already, and then those bearings and distances will be tied in to some of these lot corners that will be physically set in the field.
that's a pretty solid way to do it, yeah.
Just so I understand, that'll show up on your plan.
Correct.
Okay.
Or probably, I think I do it as a separate plan, but something that could be
Okay.
filed.
Thank you. Great. Does anyone have any other comments or questions before I throw it out to the audience? Anyone on the board? No? Anyone in the audience? Oh, I'm sorry. No? Okay. Yes, Mr. Gumet.
You know why I'm here, okay? It's for a reminder, maybe two reminders of reminding you of the activity that's happening directly across the road. So I have a problem with envelope 4, 5, and 6, okay? I can give you some examples. I'd be more than glad to. I sent down a written document. I was unable to attend one meeting, and I believe it got canceled. And I thought it would have got circulated around, but you had a site visit last winter about this time. I
Right
would
around a year
suggest maybe
ago.
another one this coming Saturday. It's only going to be 17 below zero. Okay, but my letter suggested that you pay a site visit in the spring when that farm comes to life, when there's tractors and machinery running. If you do approve this, I would say you'd want to proceed with caution, because I don't think there's ever been a subdivision in Shelburne quite like this where there's been house lots so close to a working active farm. If that's allowed, I can guarantee you it will cause some unintended consequences.
Like?
Okay, I'll use the terminology, a cow in heat. From my house, we can hear cows beller all night long. That lot, they're much closer than my house is. That noise doesn't bother me. Neither does the vacuum pump at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Neither do tractors. But that's the sound I like. It's not the sound that new homeowners are gonna like to hear. The others are far enough back, I think probably they're okay, but I don't find it to be compatible, okay, with what's across the road. You wouldn't put a gentleman's club on the side of a child care facility, daycare, and I just don't think this makes for a very good mix.
Are you concerned that it's going to be interfering with your farm operations?
Well, that, and I've said this before. 50 years ago, it was pretty normal to have a house on the side of a farm. Not true today.
Well, how do you feel they're going to interfere with your farm operations?
I know there's going to be complaints. There are going to be nuisance complaints. There's going to be noise. There's going to be smell. I'm telling you, there's a 1 million-gallon manure pit just across the road from where this driveway is coming out.
So are you fearful that they're gonna require you to move your place of business, your farm?
Well, I have no idea with enough, I'm gonna tell you, we've got enough regulations right now and enough challenges without anything in additional. We set up our roots on that corner 70 years ago. So I don't think we're ready to pull them back up, and we're certainly not ready to be driven out of town. So I think they're legitimate concerns. It's not a bread and butter farm, okay? We don't have burger night. We don't have people coming out to pet animals and
Yeah, you're a
we
working
still
farm.
do
I know
You're
well,
darn
I see
right.
it.
Oh, yeah. You know, we're one of 800 farms left in Vermont, and the only thing I can tell you is it seems like we're a few that are willing to work harder so many other people don't have to. So I'd hate to think that this would jeopardize our farm. And if it did, I'd be back to visit the town of Shelburne.
Well, I think you've got a lot of state law that's in favor. I mean, it's.
Yeah,
you got the
I
right-
don't
you
know
got
if
the- you
that's
got the right to
enough.
farm. Well,
Yep.
The stress that's involved, I don't think anybody understands.
I don't understand. What do you mean by that, sir?
Well, like you said, you know, we've got, when this pit has to be emptied, there's trucks in and out, tractors in and out, and we cannot send a guy with a broom clean the road, all right? I mean, we're very careful, but it does create some commotion. It's
Can we
like,
have your name for the record? So Mary Ann, do you have this gentleman's name? Okay, thank you.
when that barn was built, there was no intention there was going to be, I mean, you know, you never say never, but we didn't think we'd have a development right across the driveway. It's drive out of there and they could go straight into the manure, well, not quite, but.
Well, let me ask the applicant a question. How many feet is this driveway from Pond Road into this?
So the closest building envelope, I think it's probably the easiest way of doing it,
Right, that's
is
4, right?
400 feet from Pond Road. And I would, as a sort of a reminder, these building envelopes are approved as part of another subdivision. I mean, we could scrap our project, and someone could build there. They wouldn't have to come back before this.
Right,
board.
that was when, in 2010?
I think it was more like 8 or 9. Maybe it could have been 10 by the time it was done.
So what happens when it's an approved subdivision? Is there a Mylar and everything all on record?
There's a Mylar for that subdivision filed with building envelopes on it. So.
Can I make a point? If it was approved back in 2008, and I think he's probably right, it was about 10 years ago, the driveway was not coming out on Pond Road.
That's correct.
That's a different issue.
Yeah.
The point you brought up before was mix
Nuisance.
of
Both.
residential and
Correct.
agricultural. Now, you're talking about the driveway. Is that bringing up a safety issue we need to think about?
It could be a factor. Absolutely.
Jerry Gilmet here. If you left all the wood up to 400 feet like he's talking about, you'd have a different barrier than a roadway, which is a funnel right up through there. That's the thing, right? And when the access was from 116 around the back way, it kind of gave a barrier and it didn't create more traffic on Pond Road right across from the barn. That's what he's actually trying to tell you, sir. Right? There's not two different items here. It's access for that development that comes out right in
Through
front of our
Pond
barn.
Road, got it.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay, and your concern is safety? Or your concern is interfering with farm operations? Or
It's just going to
'cause
be
there's a driveway?
It's going to be just a big mess.
Both of the above, I would say.
I think we also have to take into consideration that, buyer's anybody buys one of these lots.
Yeah.
You buy a piece of property next to a retail operation, I live next to a piece of land that's zoned industrial commercial. There is a little buyer beware factor here. Anybody with a keen sense of the obvious pulling in there to look at that lot would know you got a farm operation going on there.
You're absolutely right, sir. and I couldn't argue with you anymore, but the thing is, the new buyer, or the first buyer that buys the property, will probably, he'll be happy with it. And then the next guy won't even think about this. And there's a lot of things that happen like that where people don't look at. I'll tell you one thing, I mean, you look at these houses that are up on the hill. Well, you know, when you're a teenager, you're not too old, you can walk up that hill if you can't get your goddamn car there. Well, it changes, right?
Indeed it does.
Right? And not everybody can just sell their house, right? I've actually did some work for some people that their house went right down, the house was down the bottom of the hill, and if they went down there, they couldn't come out for a week without some help.
Yeah, I think you've gone on record with your concern, but, I mean, there's nothing that they're doing here that's outside of the, you know, the zoning regulations that would really, I think, enable us to request that he make a change or deny him this application.
We don't want you to deny it, sir.
I think it's a buyer beware situation. I really do.
Mr. Gilmet, what do you want? What would you,
Well, we were happier with the road that came in from 116 when they first talked about it and kept that front kind of wooded area. And I think when we came here earlier, Bernie and I did, Brother Roger, right, we talked about something like that, and we were told that nothing had transpired yet, there was nothing to talk about. And we thought it was just something, if we brought up, it gives you something to think about. If somebody had said to me, like, you know, or said, well, you can't do this within so many feet, well, I wouldn't get blueprints all made for this. I'd kind of say, well, we gotta do them.
has the applicant thought about any other possible placement for this road from Pond Road for the driveway?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, throughout, you know, from the beginning to the end, we've considered various possibilities. The location of the curb cut for the shared driveway off of Pond Road is in probably the best spot in terms of sight distances in both directions.
It's probably in the best spot?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Because it's at sort of a high spot and you can see both ways. And then also, it's also in a spot where it allows you to access the higher.
Right.
So the lots are in a high spot, and then that's about the highest spot on Pond Road, so that reduces the amount.
And you
of
can't
grade you
get a
have to
drive,
have.
sorry to interrupt, Scott,
That's okay.
you can't get a drive, the one thought I had, but I think the topography of the land prohibits it, is making one entrance into this development near Lot 3, using that, have one entrance and eliminating that other one, but you couldn't get up that ridge, right?
You can't. It's too steep, and then there's wetlands issues,
Okay.
and it's a kind of a can of worms.
Right. Mr. Destel wants to speak, yeah.
I did meet with, I don't know if he's the highway controller or whoever's in charge of the roads in Shelburne,
All Goodrich?
Paul. He actually chose that spot. I was thinking about putting it closer to 116, and he was concerned it can't move any closer to Lot 3 because he was worried about that corner. And then I tried to push it further, closer to 116 and come in along that field. And he said I was kind of running up against a concern of that driveway being close enough to 116, that was going to be an issue. And that even if I put it there, it's still right across from your farm, quite frankly.
So what is the issue with not putting it back to where it was? They somehow or another had a gutter permit to go across the wetlands. So that would be coming in off from the driveway on Route 116, and then somewhere they cut down, it would be west, and came in from to the backside of those envelopes.
Yeah, I'll take the blame for that one.
Yeah, I know.
This was how long? This has been here for a year. This is final.
I know.
And we're going over this now, a whole relayout?
Well,
Well,
in
he said
fairness
this
to the Gilmets.
subdivision got approved
Yeah,
back in 2008. Well, it got approved,
With a
but the
different
work that was done
driveway.
was the driveway
When-
in a different location.
Okay.
I
just wanna go through due
was
process here.
referring solely to the building envelopes.
Understand.
Yep.
So the last plan that we saw before we got to final, where did you have the driveway?
it was there.
Same place. Did you guys see that?
Absolutely.
Okay, and
But they were told that was preliminary and that there's another opportunity to weigh in on the driveway at final.
okay.
So Because of that, I think it's a to have, my view is to allow anyone who comes out at night to to attend a hearing should have the opportunity to have their say. And I think we're all aware of the Gamette's concern. I think Mark made the right point that it's a concern. I agree 100%. On the other hand, it's not within our purview. I do think, Mr. Gilmette, you said something that makes some sense to me, which is that maybe this development is incompatible with what's going on next door, your farm. But the way our town regulations, our subdivision and bylaws read, this is an area that is permissible for residential development. So I think we could consider it, and I think we should consider it, and that's why I think hearing it makes a lot of sense. But you have that problem that,
Let me use a quick example. I own a block of land, 186 acres in between Bishop Road and Shelburne Falls Road. Land Trust holds the easements on that property. I'm allowed to build a barn down there. Okay, so I could really put a barn right directly across the road from Beaver Creek development. How well would that go over?
it would, well, I can't answer that.
I can build any kind of a farm building on that parcel of land.
We're here to check to make sure we're following the rules that
Yeah.
our town's laid out, and if you're following the rules, go for it.
So, I think we did talk about, in fact, that was one of the reasons for our site visit, where the driveway was cited for 3, 4, and 5, I'm sorry, for 4, 5, and 6. That there were problems getting it up from 116. Is that right? Do you want to remind us of what that
Correct.
problem was?
It's not like it was impossible, but the applicant preferred this route. And we felt like this provided, lots that were, potentially, more appealing to buyers.
We're not here to design projects for people.
Right.
Okay? We're here to make sure it complies with the zoning ordinances. And, I definitely recall when you guys came and visited us, I think you made it clear to the applicant that you have a concern. And if the applicant's willing to take that risk, then he takes that risk. And I think you got it fairly well documented in these proceedings. It's going to be part of the record that you're concerned with the compatibility, and if there are complaints, I think you got something you can fall back on and say, for lack of a better term, we told you so. So, we can't design this project for the applicant, and, we can only mitigate risk to the town and to the other residents of the town. We can't try to make him evaluate risk assessments as far as locating next to your farm, so I just wanted to, that's my take on it, Buyer beware, developer beware, and you've said your piece,
We appreciate it.
and it's duly noted, and, there's a lot of property in this town there are some potential incompatibilities, and, that's an issue to take up with the planning commission. If there's a piece of property next to another piece of property you own that you don't think it's appropriate for residential houses or whatever used to be there, then you really gotta take it up with the planning commission. It's not we don't make that call.
But this is too far along to go there now.
That's
Correct.
true. That's true.
So why wasn't that brought to our attention before now?
Well, we're not in the business, we can't give, that would have been a stop that you could have taken at that time, prior.
Well, every time I came down here and I tried to speak, you reminded me that we're not quite there yet. It's not quite the time. That would have been a perfect time to say, maybe you should be going to check with the planning zoning.
Well, what we have to do is hear the application.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, this is all understood, I quite clearly, but, and, you know, getting back to the unintended consequences, I would hate to think that after living on that corner of town, and I think you could check all around, we've got a pretty good record of being good neighbors. I certainly hope this doesn't turn me into a person I'll even hate.
I hope so too. Anything else? If that's the case, I'll close the record.
One thing, are we all set on department comments? Everybody good with that? Or is-
I would.
Okay, there's one thing I noticed, and maybe I missed it, there was some talk about putting, some triangles at the entrances to the roads, so that there's to take care of the visibility
We
issues.
showed those on the site, on the updated site plans.
Okay, so, on the updated one that I don't have.
No, I think it is on the ones you have. It's not gonna show up on the large scale drawing, I don't think.
Sheet
It's
two,
too big. If you look at,
all right,
for example,
help me along there. Sheet 3? Gotcha, yep, there it is, sheet 3.
so if you look at
I stand
5 or
corrected.
3, yeah,
Yep,
we have
okay.
the visibility charts.
Yep.
Mark, you're referring to triangles at the driveway?
Yeah, there's a
entrances?
note on sheet 3, if you look up there by the road, it says clear
There's one on
visibility
5
triangle
as
both
well.
directions. Because that is a pretty mean, there's not a lot of visibility when you pull out of there,
Okay.
and cars come whistling around that corner now and again, I'm sure. And it does show the vast trail going kind of along that tree line there, the relocated trail. Parallel to the road. So, that's all I have. Just want to make sure all those were addressed.
Anything else? Do any members of the board wish to go into deliberative session on approving or considering this application?
I'm good.
Huh? You
I'm
good?
good.
All right.
Does this get filed in the record, the final staff report?
The staff report?
Yeah, you probably ought to change it because it says preliminary.
Preliminary on it, yeah.
The one that gets filed with it.
All right, then, and if there are nothing else to add, can I have a motion to finalize the record and close the hearing? Does anyone wish to make that motion?
So moved.
And any discussion on the motion? Sorry. And can I have a motion to, is there anyone wish to make a motion to approve the application with the conditions as set forth in the staff report and then as amended during?
Do we need a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Marianne and Jeff. Can I have a second to the motion to finalize the record and close the hearing? All in favor? Aye. None opposed. Motion carries. And does anyone wish to make a motion to approve the application with the conditions as set forth in the staff report with the additions that we made during the hearing?
So moved.
Can I have a second to that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can we review those conditions, though, so we are all on the same page, Kate? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 conditions added. I have, well, I wrote Lot 5, concern about floodplain.
So I had adding condition 11.
Yep,
Right, so no development shall occur within the floodplain and watercourse overlay. Condition 12, 75-foot periphery buffer shall be depicted on Mylar. Condition 13, applicant shall consult with state or qualified wetland ecologist about the wetland advisory layer and relocate the driveway as needed.
Prior to any land development.
Prior to any land development. 14, existing, or fast trail shall be maintained as depicted because it is being moved.
Right. Is
Okay.
that, okay? And then finally,
Well, I actually have two more. 15, turnaround shall be approved by the fire department
Yep.
prior to the issuance of a CO. 16, I don't know how I'm going to word this exactly yet, but put bearings and distances.
for the comment.
Right, and those are to be filed with the.
Thank
little
you
work
for
on
that
that.
clarification. Okay, that will close this section of our hearing this evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and saying your piece. I hope everyone feels they had an adequate opportunity to say what they wanted to say. The next matter on our agenda this evening is SUB 17-05. It's the application by Vermont Integrated Architecture on behalf of the town of Shelburne for sketch plan review for the proposed mixed-use plan unit development right here to include reconstruction of the library and renovations to the Shelburne Town Hall and upgrades to the municipal campus, including changes to circulation, parking, and stormwater facilities. The properties are located at 5376, 5420, 2141, and 2137, and 5404 Shelburne Road in the Village Center, Village Design Review, Village Core, and Stormwater Overlay Districts. Looks like we have quite a few people here to talk to us today. Good evening. We let these folks clear out, and then, as always, the problem is people gather right outside our door and chat. So hopefully that won't happen too much. No, that's all right. If anyone feels they can't hear, let me know. Are there folks here to give testimony on the application this evening? If you intend to, can you raise your hand so I can get a show? Well, comment happens, sir, at the beginning of our meeting for public comment. So that's the way it's supposed to work. But if you,
Comment for this application?
yeah, so that would be testimony. You would be giving testimony. So if you intend to, I'd like everybody who's going to give testimony. So it's like a courtroom, a little mini courtroom. So, if you intend to give testimony, can everyone rise, please, and swear or affirm that you will tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in connection with any testimony you should give? Yes, okay, thank you. Let's hear from the applicant first, and we'll go from there. My name is Andrea.
Grab the mic.
Hi, my name is Andrea Murray, architect and principal of Vermont Integrated Architecture. Have with us today Megan Nidzinski, also from VIA, and our civil engineers, Peter Gibbs and Jeff Sweber. So hopefully we can answer questions. This is sketch plan review. We wanted to, come in here as soon as possible and share with you our thoughts and ideas before we get too far along. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you some background on the project and the overall site design. Megan is going to address the specifics of our preliminary application, and hopefully collectively we can answer questions and help move this thing forward. We have been delighted to have been working with the town of Shelburne for the last 18 months. We've engaged in a pretty intensive public process where we have sought feedback on what to do about the needs of the library, in particular going forward, but also the library as it sits on this municipal campus. How can we, in designing for an expanded library, also try to make some improvements to this campus at the same time? So we prepared, and you have these in your packet, I believe. This is an existing site plan. It's rendered just for ease. This is not the surveyed site plan. There are a few tweaks, but it's pretty close. But just to get everyone in the right situation, here is Shelburne Road. Here's the historic town hall, the existing library, the fire station, the town office, gymnasium, ships. We're all sitting right about here right now. And then, the paved areas are shown as well as the parking. The site plan that you have, the proposed site plan that we used in preparation for the bond vote and to gather feedback from your community is this one here. Prior to developing this plan, we were charged by the Library Building Steering Committee and the Select Board to explore 3 different options. We looked at options that included a building, or 2 options really, that had a building up front here on Shelburne Road. That was originally where the Select Board wanted to see the building for many reasons, but mainly because they wanted it to be a beacon. Libraries, I don't know how many of you are frequent library goers, but it's really interesting. Libraries have become our true community centers. They are the places where people of means and people without come together and both feel welcome. They're places where the elderly and folks who are really little come together and can learn from each other. They are places where programs and exchange of information happen. They are critical places for the elderly, especially in times of year like this, where it can be cold and lonely. So libraries are so much more today than just a repository of books. So the importance of this project was stressed by the Select Board and the Steering Committee, and its prominence in the community was really emphasized. How do we create a beacon, a place that is not just a welcoming place for our community, but also for visitors to our community? So we looked at putting it up here on this site, and we had 3 options that we gathered feedback around. And what we determined about the site up here was, even though we liked it in terms of its location, it couldn't accommodate all the program necessary. It put a lot of stress on the parking over here because the need for parking moved to this side of the site, and it also isolated the historic town hall. So the reason for situating the building attached to the current historic town hall largely had to do with how can we embrace this building and take care of this beautiful building that is actually a pretty strong and stable structure as it is right now. It's very stately, structurally pretty sound, does need a little bit of TLC. But it also would allow us to construct something that's not so big and not so expensive, because the library and community center could also have use of the space in the historic town hall. Our original layout for this building had the new, I call it the vessel of the library, sitting perpendicular to the historic town hall, and the one complaint was it's not quite visible enough. And so that's where the angle of this new proposed section comes into play. We tilted this ever so slightly so that the main entrance here is very visible from Shelburne Road, and so that the community living room, which is a multi-purpose community room here, also angles itself out. And I don't have the full drawing here, but it directly references, oh yeah, here we go, really quick shift. Here, this is the site, but it angles and it directly references the historic building that was traditionally the library here in your community. There are no shortage of angles in this town, and the angle adds a little bit of kind of dynamism to the design, as well as it creates, so this is the main entrance here. There's another entrance here that is really just a library entrance. This entrance could be used if you're coming to the library, but also if you're coming to the historic town hall. The design allows flexibility so that if the library is closed, community members could still use the historic town hall or the community living room for various events. But these three places are affectionately what we call the scoops. They're the places that are designed to capture your eye as you're traveling by or approaching. They're warm, they're well lit, they're inviting. You get a little bit of a teaser or peek inside to see what's going on. So these are kind of what grab you and pull you in. And so that angle allows for that visual view into the site. Since the bond was approved in November, we have gone back out into the community and to various user groups on the site and asked for more input. Most recently, we've been in discussions with the fire station. We need to make sure that this new circulation pattern accommodates, in particular, your beautiful new Quint, the big fire truck, and how they maneuver that on the site. And so we have made a few tweaks to the site plan to accommodate that. I'll show you a real quick sketch of where it's going. It's very similar. But what this plan essentially does is it shifts the driveway from being over here to being almost centered, so there's a direct ingress and egress from the fire station, and tries to provide clarity in terms of how you move around the site, minimize paved area, maximize green space, and provide greater pedestrian safety crossings. Because I was here one day, there was a Little League game, the fire department had an emergency, there was something going on in the gym, the library was packed in the afternoon. It was crazy here, and it was very dangerous. And not only that, there were people sneaking out up here. I guess that's locked now, but it's kind of a crazy site, and it's challenging to try and make sense of it. So here, I'll turn this sideways. This is at a larger scale, but just to put this into perspective, again, here is Shelburne Road. What we're looking at doing here is a similar footprint. We're looking at having 3 aisles here, 2 exiting the site, 1 for turning south and 1 to go north, to prevent, long buildups of cars, and 1 ingress. This also allows the fire department to, cars to move to the side and allow a vehicle out in the event of an emergency. The fire department is excited about that. Widening for sure. The way that big truck maneuvers, it actually is kind of crazy. It comes in here, it comes around this way, it turns, and then it backs into the center bay, which is really the only bay in which the truck fits. And so they really were concerned about extending this park too much further because they needed some of the width here. And of course, we were concerned about pedestrians crossing this big mass of pavement. So we're looking at a solution that is doing a little bit of both. It still has the driveway here, extends the green space in this direction, and a little bit in this direction. It also shows the potential for slightly reorganizing the parking back here, which would be to some extent designated for first responders, and then there would be parking designated for the library. There is potential for additional parking to be back here, and maybe even some parallel parking here. We're looking at, potentially spots here and some added spots here as we extend in this direction. I think a couple of things to note about the library in general. The library square footage is increasing by about 40%, I think it is. That doesn't mean everything in the library is increasing. If you've been in the library right now, you'll see that their stacks are really, really close together. You cannot get a wheelchair between the stacks. Many of the collections are in the old vault that was the town clerk's vault. You can't easily access that. So what we're doing is, by code, we're spacing out the collections and different program options to meet those codes. So their collection may increase by about 15 to 20%, whereas the square footage overall is increasing more substantially to accommodate all of those things I just mentioned. In addition, shoot, I just lost what I was going to say. The library doesn't plan to increase staff. They do hope that there will be greater number of visitors to the library, but the number of staff would stay the same at this point. You guys are pretty amazing in this community. I think it's something like 70% of your community holds a library card, and they cut you out if you haven't been there in 2 years. So it's not like somebody has a library card from 50 years ago. So you have a really, really high membership, which is amazing. You kind of lack in the age groups in the 20 and 30 somethings, and teenagers who presumably spend time in the high school library, which isn't directly here in Shelburne. But otherwise, I mean, I think the growth is to be able to be better organized, to offer more programs, more services, and to stay here in the downtown, in the walkable downtown, so that kids can come here, elementary school kids can come after school and come directly to the library, so that people doing their shopping and visiting other businesses downtown can easily access this facility. Great. Do you want to? Should we entertain questions, or do you want to go through? I'm not sure how your hearings typically work.
Does anyone have any questions? Is it Andrea?
Andrea, yeah.
I mean, it's not a question per se, but I'm glad to see that there's more thought being put into the relationship between paved space, green space, building space. I mean, as anybody in this room can attest, we have a fair share of interesting parking lots in Shelburne.
Yeah.
And, just as a sort of a frequent user of that space in a lot of different ways, your observation is very similar to my thinking every time I go through the places. There's a lot of paved area to navigate, with traffic not necessarily knowing where to. I mean, it's just
Right.
there's not a lot of organization to it, and I would love to. And I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity for more input on it, but you look at that and you just look at it in terms of color. If there were ways to maybe bring together some more of that green space to in sort of a contiguous block. I'm sure these are things you guys thought about, but I mean that would be great to see.
Continuous block, you mean in terms of,
Well, I mean,
are you talking about this particular
right. I mean, I don't want to
piece
sort
here?
of, we don't need to get into it now, but
Yep.
it just, that always feels like an island unto itself.
Yeah.
That for, I don't know, maybe good reasons is underutilized. I don't know.
Yeah, we've heard in your community that this is a fairly sacred space.
Oh, was it?
That was donated by the Rotary Club, and designed by someone on the HPDRC. And so it's somewhat precious. And so some of our earlier versions actually did do that and kind of shifted the green space up and condensed the parking here. And that was somewhat well received by some and not others. I mean, we are trying to expand this a little bit. We had hoped to expand it significantly so we could use this for stormwater management more likely. Some of our stormwater management, our stormwater management has to be dealt with on this site. Mm-hmm. But we want to do that naturally as much as we can in a beautiful way. I'd love to hear if you have other ideas for green space too.
Does anyone else have any comment?
I would
Question?
like to see a parking space now and proposed. Because I can't tell you the number of times where I had struggled to find a parking spot. Particularly when the Little Leagues are going during the summer, various community events are happening here, times when our meetings are. Like right now, the parking lot's empty.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few times where it's full. So I will want to see
Especially
a
in the
comparison
summer,
of current parking spots and proposed parking spots.
I think there's 4 more.
4 more?
So in this,
That's it?
these 2 options, there was a net increase of 4. In this,
I'm sorry. So we're making this big, beautiful library with this community center to draw more people in, and we have spots for 4 more cars?
well, in the revised scheme, it looks like we're probably going to have more like a net increase of somewhere between 20 and 30, which I think
That would be great to see. Do
Will-
you have a drawing of that yet, or no?
we're working on it.
Okay.
So this drawing here shows the potential to develop this as nose-in parking here, as well as parallel parking here. There's an increase in spots over here, and there's an increase here as well. You know, we're balancing budget here. We're trying best to understand the allocation of parkings as they have been approved in the past, which is a little bit tricky to understand. Megan might want to say something about the parking.
Sure. I think part of what we would like to hear is maybe how this should be considered. I think it's for the municipal campus to date, it hasn't been reviewed as a PUD, but it has been reviewed together as all 5 parcels. And so it's a little bit unique in this application where we're coming for this library sort of modification and not necessarily touching or responding to the rest of the campus. So I have spoken with Caitlin and Dean, and we've taken a look at prior approvals of how this has been treated. Currently, the library has 10 spaces attributed to it. And so some of the logic of different ways that we're considering of how should that parking be addressed, the zoning bylaws right now don't call out a specific number of spaces per square foot, but we could say that it's similar to retail or other, because library is not a specific use. So we could do it on a square foot basis related to the new square footage of the library. We could do it something like we're doing a 40% increase to what's there. So we do we do a 40% increase to parking? So that's another way to look at it. Also, in the past, when the Noonan House and the Ships Building fronting onto Route 7 did its change of use, there was an analysis looking at the overall parking, and there was a shared parking study that was done. And it's my understanding that they found that while 10 spaces were attributable to their new use, because of the seasonality and the different time frequency use, that no spaces needed to be added for the adequacy that was there, if I'm understanding that correctly. So I think there's 3 different ways we could look at this. A square footage determination, a doubling determination, a shared parking analysis. All of those have different budget implications. So I think we'd like to, at this point we're at sketch plan, we'd love to get that into the budget, hear from you how you'd like us to proceed and get your input.
I think it would be interesting to know kind of time of day demands for the parking, because I think a lot of times the big convergence is in the evenings, sometimes if there's a bunch of events going on. So it would just be interesting to know is kind of how the library places demand on parking kind of throughout a typical day.
Hours of operation.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been here fairly frequently during the day, and it's
Empty.
yeah, it's no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, you roll
It's
in
kind
here.
of like when you get the trifecta Little League.
Yeah, Little League,
dog
something in
class.
the gym. Yeah. all
Everything.
What would the hours look like for the community center and
Yeah.
the other
Presumably it'll
rooms?
be
Or is there
open
going
more.
to be, even though there's not anticipated staffing increases, are they anticipating, is the library anticipating more hours or, more people using this? I mean, I assume more people using the space but at different hours than they currently are, because then that would draw, different issues with the parking.
Is that all private land to the north of the parking lot there?
From this line this way, yes.
It's more markouts.
Right.
I guess the other question about parking is, not only how do you want us to qualify it, and maybe knowing the use schedule is important piece of that, but are we designing for the maximum? And or are we kind of looking at this holistically? So are we
Yeah, I think
designing
if-
for peak event or not?
No, I don't think we can ever avoid the convergence of, all these things. But I think if you can make a strong case for how, if the library is primarily an afternoon, is their peak, or, because like Mark said, I think there's parking available during a lot of times. It's,
Yeah, except for election day, it's usually not a
Election
problem.
day is
Yeah, or
4 or 5
evenings.
o'clock in the evenings and that's just when the stars line up. And,
Yeah.
I mean, you could have 300 parking spaces
Yeah.
when there's a Little League tournament, and
Plus, nobody
You
wants to
still
park
won't
in
have
the western lot during Little League because the balls.
you risk losing your windshield.
So those may look
Yeah.
empty, but.
Yeah. Good point.
and I think there is an opportunity to the south of the fire station to put some spaces in there.
Yeah, one of the things the fire station actually would really like, or the fire department would like, is to cut back this island. They do a lot of damage to this row of trees here when they come through with their trucks, and they would just as soon see us cut this back as little as we can, as close as we can get it to the building, so that their trucks don't do that damage. But in doing so, I think we might be able to get a row of parallel parking spots there. Again, they're targets during Little League season, but they're still during other events, a good place to park. It should be noted that every Thursday, the fire department closes off this area for training, so they use the area behind the fire station for training, so that's not accessible.
The most important thing for me is where's the bottle drop going to go for the Boy Scouts bottle drop? That's where I drop my bottles off every couple of weeks. Don't
I
forget
know
that.
where the book drop is.
No, the bottle drop out back, it's a popular
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It's a big revenue stream for the Boy Scouts.
Yep.
I would also, I think currently there's kind of a straight sidewalk that parallels Shelburne Road, and it looks like maybe you're
Here.
pulling it
Yep.
back more in.
Yeah, so we wanted to pull this back because one of the
crossing,
things we
yeah.
observed were the cars, especially leaving the site,
Yeah.
tend to lurch out. You're so eager to find that one place to be able to get in,
can't
especially
ever
to
get
the
out.
northbound traffic,
Yeah.
that I've seen, people standing here on the sidewalk timid because they're not sure if the
Oh, yeah.
driver sees them trying to cross. So we thought that if we could pull this back,
great.
that would
I
allow
like
the
that.
That's a
first
great idea.
car
Yep.
to be
I
up
think
front.
that's a really good idea. One of the plans we saw looked like it was more kind of rectilinear and not as conducive to people.
Yeah, this I think is not totally
Yeah.
thought out. That's a
Yeah.
fragment of what exists there right now.
Okay.
And so I think that
I would just make it
probably,
conducive to people
not-
that want to go past the,
Yeah.
continue on down.
yeah, I think it
Which it looks like
ideally
you've done in that.
it'd be a little more
Yeah,
fluid.
fluid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that that row of trees along the fire station, that
These here.
that they damage those when they pull the trucks out.
Yeah.
If there was parallel parking on the other side,
Along here.
you mentioned that they'd be at risk for the Little League balls, but are they in harm's way from the trucks?
The cars being
If there were
there?
cars parked there?
Well, one of the things we're about to do, I think tomorrow morning, is to do some some turning and marking, and really we have the turning radii from the manufacturers of these trucks, but our engineers are actually going to go out there and really verify it. So those are some of the questions we hope to answer through that exercise. Yeah.
I have a question about, I like the idea of the community living room and the angle and being able to see it from the road. And I'm wondering if there's a way to actually make it more visible from the road, because from my point of view as a layperson, some of the landscaping that you have there would obscure it a little bit and hide it a little bit.
Yeah, so this isn't really a formal landscaping design
Okay.
or plan yet, and that's something that will be submitted with the next phase and round of review. I completely agree with you. I mean, there's a delicate balance between wanting to create, so there are some trees that exist here on the neighbor's property,
Sure.
and we'd like to maintain as many of those as we possibly can. There's a delicate balance because what happens right here on Shelburne Road, you probably all know it subconsciously, but all the trucks going north as they come to the light up here, they shift down and their air brakes, they put on the air brakes and you get this
Yeah.
and so it's really noisy. And so having also some buffer
good
there
point.
is a helpful thing. So I think that we haven't gotten into that completely yet. It is something we do want to study. We are a little bit fortunate in that the topography does drop off a bit as it comes towards Main Street. So this is sitting up a bit higher, and this volume is going to be about 1.5 stories tall too. So it'll be a little bit,
Good.
more visible and prominent in the vertical dimension.
With glass?
Yeah, do we
Do you have an elevation in there somewhere?
well, this isn't that side. These are very early renderings, but this shows the side. So this is the community living room here. Here's the historic town hall. So this is the east facade. I don't think it's going to be all glass. It'll be some kind of a metal system with some infill panels and glass. But this is very diagrammatic at this point. But you kind of get the sense that it's this little beacon, this thing you can see in, a fireplace in there, it's a warm, inviting place to be. These are views. This is the view from kind of Shelburne Road here's the driveway. And so this is the main entry scoop, if you will. Again, we want to be a beacon, we want to draw you in, but we're also trying not to overwhelm or overpower the historic building. So, when you attach to an historic building, there are a lot of different ways you can do it. We want to be very respectful. We're taking lots of cues from the architecture of this building in terms of horizontal data, proportions of the window, scale, etc. But so here you get this glimpse. You hopefully get a little bit of a tease or a taste, and you're lured in.
You're going with a flat roof?
It's a low sloped roof, so it's about 1 in 12 sloped roof, gently sloping roof. The roof, we've looked at it a couple ways. We've looked at potentially having a green roof on the building. We're also looking at, does the roof have solar panels on it? So there is a definite slope to the roof. You can kind of see it here. It's more,
I was just looking at the aesthetics matching up with the traditional historic town building.
You normally don't want to copy it.
Yep.
Copy it or complement it.
Well, yeah, it's pretty common to go with a flat roof next to a.
Have you guys looked at
Historic.
doing any, I know there's
This
a lot
is-
of limitations on the site. Maybe this is a Peter question, but some underground stormwater treatment, subsurface stormwater treatment chambers or anything?
In the beginnings of the design.
Okay.
That's why we
There's
have-
another microphone right
Oh,
there
yeah,
for Peter.
okay. I forgot. Yes. So Peter Gibbs. So there are 3 different areas that we've designated placeholders for stormwater management. We are in the design, getting into the minutia of the design, and just like with the parking and the grading and the stormwater, that's all happening at this point. So yeah, we're going to come back with details on that. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause not a lot of room. Too tight.
No, but there are to the northwest. That's the low point of the site, right in there. Or maybe I could get it, yeah.
You want your
Or we could,
Northeast-
the one right
northeast.
up on the wall, we could, right there.
if you want.
Okay,
Right.
yep.
There's a structure right in there that's low, and then we would pick up the line that's going to that right in there and put another structure, and it'd be low enough to catch all the foundation drains that we're putting around the historic town hall and the foundation drains that are in the new library. And then also, like the stormwater management that would be out front, the overflow from that would all probably go right in there.
Okay. I was talking more about, like underground chambers and,
Parking.
under the parking areas.
Under the
and
parking, again,
Infiltration and so forth.
yeah, we haven't gotten that far into the design yet.
I don't know what the soils are like. There. If you
They're
We
not
know
that
what
great.
Not
We did a
great.
bunch of
did
borings
some
in there.
borings already?
Yeah.
Not good?
Yeah, we're not going to get a lot of infiltration on this site. That's for sure. But again, we're working with the topography. As Andrea said, we're out. Jeff is going to be out 7 o'clock tomorrow morning with the fire department, actually doing physical tests with the trucks, not just auto turn, but what do they really do out there, and be able to come back and talk to you more about what we found, where we could provide additional parking. The fire department has been very helpful with suggestions because they live with it every day. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to do to come back to you.
We also, next steps, we are going to reach out to the other department heads, Public Works and the Police Department. They all occupy this site to some extent, to really understand what their concerns are, operability and maintenance and all those other things.
Is there any opportunity to expand the parking on the south side of the building? Or is that limited?
Over here?
Way over on the,
South side of the
Oh,
complex.
south
Yeah.
side here?
yes.
I don't know. There's a buffer here. There's a property line here too. There's access, police department access in there. We haven't really looked at that. We've been trying to not impact the whole site.
There's a swale right in here, so that might be tough. But when we're looking at, striping, looking at different striping patterns and stuff. Right now, I can tell you, this is 8, 4, and 4. When you go out there, many times it's 5 and 5. So we can look at stuff like that, but, just changing the striping or something to increase the parking counts.
How is the grade north to south? Is it, I don't recall, other than it's very level. Is it slightly to the north? Okay,
To the northeast.
northeast.
Yeah, and Marcotte's property overall is lower.
Over
Pretty
here
much
is
at the
quite a
northern
bit
border.
lower.
It sinks down on the northwest parking lot there. It drops off.
So Peter, you were commenting to the northwest, there's a drainage structure?
Up here.
Yes, there's a low drainage structure right in there.
Okay, and where does that go? Just over there?
It goes out into the railroad property, and where does it go from there? I mean, it's heading down Harbor Road.
Okay.
The other part of the site, there's stormwater management in this corner too. I don't know exactly where the high point is, but it's somewhere in
Circle?
here, and it does go back.
Oh, it does? Okay. So in general, are you thinking of a 2-story library or 1-story?
2.
The library, yeah. So this is going to be a 2-story building. The addition to the library will be a 2-story building. I have a very crude section here that might help understand. I think I have a section here. Yeah. Sorry, we were just having a design meeting prior to this. Really hard to see. Oh, it doesn't really show you, but this is mainly a 2-story building. The community living room is a story and a half. what's, I think, important to understand is that the historic town hall, maybe better here, the historic town hall, the floor level, the main floor level is about 4 feet above grade.
Yeah.
And then you go down to the basement, and there's about a 10-foot floor-to-floor height here. We need for the new library and new construction to come right in at grade. So you're shifting ever so slightly. So you come in, and there are, you know, steps that go up about 3'9" or so to the main floor of the town hall, and then you can continue up to the second level of the library in here.
So will presumably there'll be handicap accessibility to the old?
Yes, there'll be a full elevator
Elevator.
also in this center connector piece that
That
serves
connects the-
all functions, all floors of the
all three.
historic building and the new building. Yeah.
Nice.
Anything else from anyone?
Real quick, what's the timeline on this project?
Yep. It's a pretty quick timeline. We're hoping to begin construction at the end of June, beginning of July. So we're working through all our permitting with you guys. We've been to the HPDRC. We're going back to them again next week with elevations and more defined plans. And then we'll be coming back to you with the information requested in the review that we received from you folks. And, you know, love to hear if there are any other concerns or things you want to see that will help you understand the project better.
It's great. I think there's, sir, you've been,
Hi,
your name, please, for the record. I know everybody knows who you are, but
David Hall, and I came along just to see what was going on because I haven't been able to make most of the other meetings. And my concerns here are for the trees that are out here existing because I'm also a Shelburne tree warden.
Oh, great.
And I don't like hearing you say you want to cut down the trees, even though the ash trees that
know,
are
I
along the
hear
side
you.
of the fire department, just because
Yeah.
you want to cut them down.
I-
Granted, we have too many ash trees around here, but moving the driveway is going to impact a lot of our existing plantings out here in the town center.
Yep.
And as tree warden and member of the tree advisory committee, that's our role is to oversee, and the DRB gets to okay the overall plan,
Yeah.
but you also need to come talk to the tree committee
We'd like to,
about the plan. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I've just got some big concerns on the number of trees that you're going to be impacting that are out there currently.
Yep, I think the big ones that we're looking at are, you know, obviously these trees by the fire station. There are some cedar trees here that are kind of in the way, and we've had various opinions on those, so I'd be interested in yours on what to do.
You don't want to hear mine.
Okay. And then there's one tree by the entrance to the library that is also kind of in the way, although our construction manager says it's small enough, he thinks they could.
Yeah, well, there's one redbud right by the
The
front
redbud is
door,
the
and
one.
we've had some discussions about the cost, although once the snow started to fly, everybody at the library seemed to have
Forgotten
stopped
about it.
thinking about that. Those of us that
No,
make our
yeah.
living with trees actually are still out there working.
We also
But-
have a pretty healthy allowance in our budget for new trees, and so I know that the library trustees have mentioned talking to the tree committee about what we should plant and where it ought to go.
Right, but before you got too far along and then came and wanted permission to cut something down that I said no to,
Yep,
I thought I'd
That's
come
great.
find out what you've got going on.
that's good.
Sorry to hijack your questions.
All right.
thank you. Anything else? I'm really excited about it. I think it's like, putting
big
an addition
improvement.
onto your home. It's, Shelburne being kind of our home. It's very exciting. And I'm glad the bond passed.
Thanks.
So, thank you. All right, so moving along. I don't think we take any action, do we? No.
We have to
Oh, yeah.
classify it. So I'll move to classify, this application SUB 1705 as a major subdivision.
And, great. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Want to keep going?
Sure, why not? I'd move for the applicant for SUB 1705 be authorized to prepare a preliminary plan application with the following recommendations. One would be to obtain written comments from department heads as required in 61028 of the regulations, and I'll add one, a friendly addition to reach out to the tree committee and the tree warden to get their input sooner than later.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, motion carries. Thank you for coming. Any further business?
Get signed in time?
Yeah, do we have
We have
anything to
two
sign
more.
tonight?
Well, no, we just have the ones that were emailed and for the 17th. Yeah,
Yep, didn't get a chance to look at it, so.
neither did
Got a
I.
bunch more coming.
It's just for Kate.
We do.
Yeah, we've been busy.
All right.
Very excited about the libraries.
We adjourn?
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
motion to adjourn. Thank you.
So moved. Or Jeff?
Second?
Is that a motion, Jeff?
Motion.
Okay, I'll second.
Any discussion?
Not at all.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I always forget to do that.